Gavi to come up from the Wurundjeri Corporation, who has offered to welcome us to Wurundjeri country.
Thank you. Come on, a little bit louder. First of all, thank you very much for that warm welcome, and thank you all for inviting me here today. I think it's very important we walk this journey together. Now we are a multicultural society. I'll start the event off with saying Wominjeka Waminjika to everyone. Wominjeka Waminjika in the Wurundjeri Wurrung language means welcome. So welcome to all Indigenous and non-Indigenous people here today. I'd also just like to say I'm very proud and honoured to be here today, standing tall for my people once again, like I have done for 36 years, and I will continue to do so for the rights of our own country. My great-grandfather was the last Nurrungita for Wurundjeri. Nurrungita in the Wurundjeri Wurrung language means last head tribesman leading our mob out at the mission at Corrandirk, where I live today with my family. He took over from my great-great-uncle. My great-great-uncle was King Barak. King Barak was our fearless leader that took the government on for land rights in the 1800s, right up to 1903 when he passed. My great-grandfather took over leadership of Wurundjeri from there, and he led our mob from 1903 right up to 1924, when the mission was closed due to colonisation and being forced out into the white community, and to also build the township of Hillsville. We are also a part of the Kulin Nation. So Kulin means man. In the Kulin Nation, we had our 5 language groups. We had the Wadawurrung to the west, the Coorong, who are the westerly neighbours to the Wadawurrung, Tanarong to the northeast, Bunurong to the southwest, and the Wurrung of Wurundjeri territory that we stand on here today. The Wurundjeri lies within the cities of Melbourne. It extends from the mountains of the Great Dividing Range, south of the Burrung to the Morioi Creek, west to the Werribee River, and east to Mount Baw. The Wurundjeri people, they have a social totem. It is Bunjil the eagle. Bunjil represented spiritual powers throughout many parts of Australia. Bunjil taught all the laws about life, behaviour and ceremonies. Make sure that our culture would continue for all walks of life throughout Australia. So Bunjil was referred to as the creator of mankind. Bunjil created great people from the land. That is why we call the land our mother, or the mother of creation. Never can the land be taken away. The land will always belong to Aboriginal people, as we are part of the land and the land is part of us. Our story is similar to the European people. Theirs is by their chosen faith, ours is by the dream time. We both have creators and beliefs, and ours is Bunjil. It is a traditional custom of the Australian Aboriginal community to be asked and to give permission for people to enter their lands. And today you have now joined with me to honour the spirits of my ancestors, past, present and emerging, who have nurtured these lands for over 60,000 years, and we, as the owners of the land, offer our heartily welcome to the land, and hope that together as citizens of this beautiful country, we can build, develop and unite stronger nations for all people. I'll close in the Wurrung language, which is Wominjeka, Waminjika, Wurundjeri, Darak, Yemen, Kumbibik, which means you are most welcome to the lands of the Wurundjeri people. Before I jump down and get that loud applause I am expecting, a little bit louder this time than what it was at the start, please. Really rev it up this time. All right. I just want to touch on a couple of very important things. Last year I was a big speaker for the Yes Vote. I don't know if most people understand what the Yes Vote was. The British government actually came to Australia and brought this in with their constitution, coming into our lands, and they made all these rules and brought them here, and then we had a yes vote to see if the Indigenous people could join, and have a guess what? They said no. So the treaty process and the native title is going to fix all this up. So we will have our rights to speak in our country about our own lands, our own people, our own culture, like we should be. Our culture was stolen many, many years ago, and we're lucky to be here today. My family, after invasion, colonisation is what I'm talking about here. I lost 95% of my family due to colonisation. If you don't know what colonisation it is, it was when the English came here and took our country. So, you know, we are only 2.8% of our own people in Australia today, and we still get treated like a doormat. So, yeah, just get behind our people, support us, and treaty's all about telling the truth. So we'll see what this country's like in a couple of years when everyone actually knows the truth. Thank you very much for having me here today.
Thanks, Uncle Tony, for a generous welcome. And also some big insights into changes that are going on right now in Victoria, which would be worth for many of you to learn more about. I wanted to welcome Professor Tim Marshall, who's the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the College of Design and Social Context here at RMIT, to say a few words in the way of welcome to RMIT.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you all, and it's wonderful to see you here, and for me to be able to welcome all the participants, keynote speakers, the organising committee members and others to this 11th International Conference on Climate Change at RMIT University here in Melbourne, Australia. So again, thank you all for being here. I know for many of you this is a much longer trip than it was for us, so it's great to have you with us. So the conference does provide opportunities to address climate and land use issues at a critical juncture. And the critical juncture is COP30 that is currently going on in Brazil this month. Is addressing the challenges of addressing climate change risks through strategies for cities and rural areas. And will have increased, and so has increased profile in public and political discussions. In our own region, climate change has urgent and profound health, well-being and livelihood implications in relation to biodiversity, food security, water systems and cities. And these challenges are also urgent in the ASEAN region, of course. And I welcome insights from colleagues from Universitas 11 Maret to this event. I just learned from my colleague that that means the University of March 11th. Yeah, so I didn't. As well as from other, I know there are other distinguished guests from across the ASEAN region joining us today to discuss. So the conference aims to align with the strategy and mission of RMIT University, both here in Australia and throughout the ASEAN region, and also on our campus in Vietnam and in Europe. And our commitment to these issues through teaching, research and public engagement is evidenced by our All of University Regenerative Futures Institute, which we launched officially this year. And this cuts across all of our colleges, our portfolios, our campuses here in Asia and in Europe. And it's something where it's not a standalone institute, it's cutting across all the activities we do in order to have the greatest impact possible in this area. And also with our planetary civics inquiry and other research initiatives such as RMIT's enabling impact platforms. And I wish to thank the Urban Futures Enabling Impact Platform for their role in supporting this conference. I look forward to the engaging discussions that I know you're going to have, the networking opportunities, and most of all, laying the groundwork for future collaborations that will emerge from this conference. So thank you again for all being here, and it really will take all of us working together collectively everywhere all the time to have significant impact on what is a very urgent issue for all of us. So thank you again for being here, and have a great event. Thanks. Thank you back to Andrew.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks so much. I also wanted to introduce Professor Fitria Rahamotbi, who I had the opportunity to meet last night, who's the Vice Rector for Academic and Research Affairs at UNS, to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. Selamat pagi and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The honorable leaders of RMIT, Professor Tim Marshall, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Dean of Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas 11 Maret, and all colleagues from UNS, the respected keynote speakers, and all of the organizing committee, and all of the participants of this conference. On behalf of Universitas 11 Maret, it is my great honor to welcome all of you to the 11th International Conference on Climate Change 2025, co-hosted by RMIT University and Universitas 11 Maret. It is truly an honor to stand here today as we gather under one shared mission to strengthen collaboration, innovation, and commitment in addressing one of the greatest challenges of our time, which is climate change. This conference represents more than just an academic meeting, but it is a bridge that connects researchers and practitioners from diverse nations, united by our shared responsibility to secure a livable planet for future generations. And today, as we exchange ideas, share research findings, and explore actionable strategies, we reaffirm our belief that no single institution or nation can tackle climate change alone. Collaboration is essential. Partnership between RMIT University and Universitas 11 Maret stand as a model on how academic collaboration can transcend border, cultures, and discipline. Together, we aim to generate knowledge, empower communities, and drive innovation that contribute to the global climate agenda and sustainable development goals. Climate change is not only an environmental issue, it is a complex challenge that affects our economies, our health, our food system, and our very way of life. Addressing it requires not only scientific excellence, but also strong partnership, social awareness, and collective will. Through this conference, we hope to foster meaningful dialogue, exchange ideas, and develop solutions that can be implemented both locally and globally. We also wish to inspire young researchers and students to take part in shaping our future where sustainability becomes a shared culture, not just a goal. Then I would like to express my gratitude to RMIT University for its partnership and friendship, to all keynote speakers and presenters for sharing their expertise, and to the organizing committee for their hard work in making this event possible. May the discussion and collaboration that emerge from ICCC 2025 bring us closer to a world that is not only more sustainable, but also more just, resilient, and united. Thank you very much. Enjoy the conference. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Maria. Okay, thanks. And by way of, we're right on time, so we've finished our welcome to the early. So thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to hear from both universities. I wanted to then move to, I suppose, the substance of what we're talking about here today, to start with a short presentation from Andrew Campbell, who, and following up with a presentation which I believe will be online. We're just working out the logistics of that. We've had, just by the way, we've had a couple of changes to today's sessions because of some travel arrangement changes that occurred over the weekend. So I'll welcome Andrew up, and I believe his slides are on here too, so I can give you this to use. The big one. There you go, grab that.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Selamat pagi. Great to be here. Great to be back on Wurundjeri country. Congratulations to RMIT and Universitas 11 Maret for putting on this event here today. Okay. I'm going to talk about what I call the converging insecurities: food, water, energy, and health. All of those are exacerbated by climate change. This is my farm in Western Victoria. I'm a 5th generation farmer. We grow sheep for wool and meat, but also I'm a forester and I grow trees for wood, for biodiversity and for carbon. And these are what I call the converging insecurities. Am I able to see it? Oh yeah, that's better. We have a lot more people on the planet, so we need to grow more food. If we wasted less food, we wouldn't need to increase agriculture so much. For the first time in human history, humans will have to learn to feed ourselves using less land, less water, and less nutrients than in the past. So agriculture has done an amazing job through the 20th century of increasing food production to feed a growing world, but it's done so by getting bigger and bigger and bigger, clearing more land, using more water, using more energy, using more nutrients. We can't continue that way. And we need to do so particularly without expanding our take of water. And per capita, the amount of fresh water per person in the world is going down rapidly. And finally, we need to change our energy system radically. And in my view, this is a huge opportunity for rural areas in the world. And farmers all over the world need to change from being energy consumers to energy producers and sellers. And that's a huge opportunity. That's Gorontalo. I took that out of the window of a small plane. When we look at it, this challenge is not just technical. It's about technical, policy, social, the whole gamut of human endeavour. We are undergoing the greatest structural change in the human economy ever attempted, which is to decouple economic growth from growth in the amount of carbon we put into the atmosphere. In increasingly difficult climates, I'm very happy for these slides to be made available to everyone afterwards, so don't worry about trying to copy things as I go. We need to figure out how to grow our economies without growing our take on finite fresh water availability, and we need to radically improve energy productivity. And we need to continue to feed ourselves without trashing the last nature left on the planet. And increasingly, consumers are concerned about the quality and safety of the food they eat and the extent to which it's damaged soil or animals or workers in agricultural enterprises and so on. Each of those technical and policy challenges is huge, very complex, very demanding, very politically difficult. We need to do them all at the same time, while improving sustainability, which is living within our ecological means, and resilience, which is the ability of the system to withstand a shock without fundamentally changing shape. And my contention is that of all the activities that humans do on planet Earth, agriculture is both our single biggest footprint and the single biggest lever that we have to turn things around. So the way in which we grow food is the most important lever that we have to engineer change. So across the world, agriculture is still the biggest employer of people on the planet. It uses 3/4 of all the fresh water that we divert. It uses nearly 90% of ice-free non-desert land. It causes most deforestation, most eutrophication, that's when too many nutrients are in our water systems. And depending on how you draw the boundaries, it's 1/4 to 1/3 of global emissions. COVID-19 was not a one-in-a-century event. It was the 6th zoonotic pandemic since 1980. The next one will likely be within the next decade. These pandemics start in the food system, a wet market, the deforestation that causes humans and bats to be in closer contact. So animal health and human health and ecosystem health, which together we call One Health, are intimately connected. And we need systems that think about that holistically. And finally, increasing agricultural productivity is still by far the most effective way of lifting people out of poverty worldwide. So, agriculture is important. After several decades of steadily increasing not just food production, but reducing the number of people starving around the world, things turned around, and that turnaround was accelerated by COVID-19. And we talk about the 3 C's, in fact it's 4, climate change, COVID and conflict. We now have about 350 million people facing acute insecurity and 50 million starving people. Crucially, about 1/3 of the people on the planet do not have an appropriate diet. And it's really, these are not simple fixes because they're linked, as I've said. And finally, that overarching challenge is how to produce more food while shrinking agriculture. I won't go into the detail of this slide, but it's talking about the interactions between climate change and food systems. So how climate change affects food systems, from more pests and diseases, less reliable monsoon, big extreme events, the displacement of people, but also how the food system impacts on climate change. And this is and not just in greenhouse gases, but using most of the anthropogenic nitrogen. So these are crucial interactions which we need to understand systemically. If we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 of them. Agriculture and food systems drive about 12 of the 17 SDGs. Food security, in my view, cannot be separated from water security, energy security, biosecurity and health security. All of those feed into human movement, human migration, especially from conflict zones. All of them are amplified by climate change. What does that mean for us as academics, as researchers, as scientists, as policymakers who want to have an evidence-based approach to policy? Well, it means that the way we operated in the 20th century is no longer fit for purpose. In my field, agri-centric, crop-specific or sector-specific, farm-scale or field-scale or plot-scale research That's still important, but it actually is not able to comprehend the systemic dimensions of that challenge that I've just outlined. So that sort of research and extension and piecemeal policy making will not deliver us the solutions that we need. We need to keep doing that work because you need to have little pieces of the puzzle to put the whole puzzle together, but you can't put the whole puzzle together by just doing plot scale or just researching wheat or just researching rice or just researching cassava. So, arising out of COVID, some faults in the food system regionally were very clear. And in my previous role at ACR, we funded a very important study, a very quick one on this, and it identified very quickly that some countries in the region were making policy mistakes of suddenly banning food exports and subsidising the wrong things. And so there's a very good synthesis of what to do and what not to do. In the short term, stop subsidising biofuels that displace human food, but make sure that you can export food where it's profitable to do so and import food where other people can grow it more efficiently than you. Some countries had terrific social protection mechanisms that bolstered local food production. We sometimes see very well-meaning interventions that actually disincentivise local people to produce their own food. That's a very perverse outcome. Anything you can do to reduce food loss and waste has a high return. And the FAO and the World Bank and the International Food Policy Research Institute a couple of years ago published an incredibly important study that analysed $850 billion a year of agricultural subsidies worldwide and found that 87% of them were making problems worse. They were increasing inequity, increasing pollution, increasing deforestation, increasing emissions, and that only a small fraction of the money was actually reaching the intended beneficiaries of farmers. The biggest beneficiaries were multinational corporations. So if we could repurpose just 5% of those agricultural subsidies into research and development on more systemic approaches, that would totally transform the budgets for this sort of work. This is me with my former boss, Penny Wong, our Australian Minister for Foreign Affairs, and the ACR CEO reports direct to the Foreign Minister. And our role is to fund research partnerships across the region to improve food security and reduce poverty. I don't have time to go into much of that work. I'm just going to give a couple of tiny little examples of the sorts of projects that try and take a more systemic approach. Here's one in Laos. If you look at the Mekong Basin, 70% of all protein consumed by humans is fish. There are more than 1,000 native fish species in the Mekong. Every single one of those species needs to migrate upstream to breed and then get back downstream to complete its life cycle. What have humans done? Put a lot of barriers, small irrigation weirs, and now massive hydroelectric dams in those streams in both the main stem of the Mekong, but also importantly all its tributaries. And so we are directly sacrificing food and nutrition security to improve energy security right through the Mekong system. In the Murray-Darling Basin, we have figured out, scientists in Australia have figured out, and of course the fish in the Mekong are like the fish in Australia. They're fat and slow and sluggish. They're not like salmon. They can't jump. So they're no good at getting upstream over a dam or a weir. So I don't know where my slides have gone, Andrew. Here we go. So scientists from Charles Sturt University have designed rudimentary fish ladders that enable the fish, gives them a gentle staircase to swim upstream around the weir. And we've even done one recently around the Zairaburi Dam on the main stem of the Mekong, which has more, our fish ladder has more concrete in it than the MCG, for those who are local. In Timor-Leste, ACR and DFAT worked for 16 years to develop an entirely new seed system for the country called Seeds of Life, community-based. It involved 60% of all households in the country, and it led to 40% increases in yields of all the main commodity crops. I'll just finish on this one. On the edge of Nairobi is the largest slum in Africa, called the Kibera slum. More than 1 million people live there. We worked with the International Centre for Insect Physiology and Ecology, CIPE, based in Nairobi. And in this case, we are growing the larvae of the black soldier fly. And the larvae are fed human waste from composting toilets that have been rolled out through the Kibera slum. The human waste is collected every day, and it is used as a substrate for black soldier fly. They lay their eggs, the eggs hatch, the larvae gets boiled and then sun-dried in a solar-driven facility, and you finish up with what looks like large grains of grey rice. Those dried larvae are fed to village chickens and to fish for aquaculture. So a big problem with the sustainability of aquaculture is that we're often pillaging the sea to get food for aquaculture. Here we have a land-based food for not just a land-based, but a waste product-based food for aquaculture. The village chickens lay their eggs for much longer. They're much healthier eggs. In this case, we've actually measured improvements in human cognition of the primary school students who are eating these eggs. This project has no external inputs of water, nutrients, or energy. The plant exports green energy to the grid. The pupae and everything get composted and sold as green fertiliser. And there's enough moisture in the human waste coming in to drive the whole system. These maggots increase their biomass 300-fold in 3 weeks. So the biological productivity of the system right there on the equator is incredible. Imagine if you had a cow or a pig or a chicken that got 300 times bigger in 3 weeks. So extraordinary. So we're improving sanitation, improving food security, improving energy security, improving waste management, improving human cognition through one well-conceived project. That's the most exciting project out of the 1,600 that I was involved with with ACR. So to conclude, we have to go beyond just being incremental and reactive. We need to think about food, water, energy, health and climate as one interconnected, intertwined issue. And that requires a system approach, not just down at the site level, but across whole value chains and whole regions, particularly peri-urban regions. We need to think short-term, medium-term and long-term, all at the same time. And we need to think structural and transformative, not just incremental tweaks, because that won't get us there. So finally, I was at a workshop in Chiang Mai, where we had these fancy international consultants developing governance definitions. And a local water official from Thailand said, well, for me, governance is how society shares power, benefit and risk. And I thought, wow, that is so elegant. That is so much better than anything the consultants came up with. And we need to think about power, benefit and risk even in something like the Murray-Darling Basin, when you look at who bears the risk of a drought, it's the environment. Who's got the power? It's very clear to see where power is. It's a useful lens. We need to operate multilaterally because these problems are transnational and it's completely inefficient for every country to be trying to tackle them on their own. But we also need to be doing far more bilaterally. And as I spent 7 years in the ACR role, where our job was partnerships, I can increasingly realise that the word partnering as a verb was more useful than partnership as a noun. So the act of being a partner and how you do partnering was actually a more useful lens than the nature of the partnership, who's around the table, and so on. And to me, that means that delivering all of that agenda requires new kinds of professionals than what we were producing in the 20th century. These 21st century wicked problems are going to require new kinds of professionals. So I hope that your two universities are absolutely focused on producing graduates and in partnering in ways with civil society and industry that deliver us the sorts of people who can help humanity navigate its way through these, what's commonly called polycrises. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And some good positive ideas at the end too. So it's always a challenge in these topics to keep a positive perspective on many issues too. And thanks for your call for new kinds of professionals. We'll have a chat about what we should be doing. We have a slight change in what's going on for the moment. So Dr. Medril's from Bapanas was unable to join us and is unable to present, but he's sent some slides. And Maria, you are going to quickly summarise those slides for us. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I am here on behalf of Dr. Medilzam. So, Dr. Medilzam is our Indonesian Ministry of Regional Planning. So, he is the deputy. But unfortunately, actually, he already agreed to come and present in this conference, but unfortunately, our president has banned all the ministers and all the Echelon 1, the official Echelon 1 from our country to go abroad in this month. So he cannot go. So on behalf of Dr. Medilzam, I would like to summarize his presentation about the rural climate linkages and regenerative futures and climate resilience. Okay, so next, okay, thank you. So this is about the urban planning from Indonesian perspective, especially from the Ministry of National Development Planning, or Bappenas. So here we want to start from the climate threats for our urban, urban change in Indonesia. Especially, we believe that Indonesia is one of the big country in ASEAN, especially. So the problem in Indonesian urban planning should be also contribute the problems also in ASEAN countries especially. So the climate change has negatively impact Indonesian climate, especially as you can see that the temperature increase for the last 10 years is about 0.4 to 0.75. So it's a high increase with the uncertainty for the rainfall. With the increase and decrease approximately, the standard deviation is 70 millimeter per month. So some area getting wetter and some area getting more dry according to these climate change conditions. And we also facing the sea level rise about 0.8 to 1.2 centimeter per year. So there's some predictions that some big cities in Indonesia will be underwater for like next 100 years. We are facing also that 5.8 million square kilometer of Indonesian ocean are dangerous for the shipping, especially for the small ship. And then also 18,000 kilometers of the coastal line are categorized as the vulnerable area. And some of these vulnerable area are the cities in Indonesia. So, sorry, I have to. So from this condition, the urban areas are facing the challenges. As you can see that there's so many challenges here from the urban sprawl and then low level of climate change and then the low productivity. And we are also facing that the cities, some cities, it's called the Bima city, in Celebes experience drought into the severe drought in 2023. And then also, but some are facing drought, but some are facing flood. Okay, and the air quality, especially in Jakarta, the capital, the standard is very not healthy. Okay, the unhealthy. So these are the urban problems we are facing in the national and in the urban level. And then this is the impact of the climate change. As you can see that we have here in the data, we have 10 super priority cities, which has, how to say, vulnerable to climate change, and then 49 top priority cities and 52 priority cities. These cities are categorized to the level of how they face the urban challenges. And about 831,000 poor people at the super priority cities will be impacted, especially in these 10 super priority cities. They will be impacted by this climate change. So this is the urban sprawl, especially in Indonesia. The most populated island is Java and the Sumatra Island. So now, currently, approximately 50% of the population live in the urban areas, especially in the Java Island. And we predicted by 2045, the next 20 years, almost 70% of the Indonesian population will be concentrated in the cities, in the big cities. So the metropolitan area will be increased in the next 10 years, about 25% in the Java Island and almost 10% outside of Java. So the areas of urban growing very fast. Recently, it's almost reached 97% in Java and Sumatra Island. So from here, we can see that in next 10 years, it's 77.5% of the total population will live, especially in the urban area in Java and Sumatra. Although we predict it will be the next 20 years, but the fact is the next 10 years it increase more fast than we predicted. So the urbanization actually has not pushed the economic growth optimally. From this, how to get it? So from this 50% to 70% within 20 years, the GDP only increased about from 1% to 1.4%. So the increasing of the urban areas doesn't push. It's how to say, it's not linearly correlated with the economic condition. So the urbanization raised the rural areas problems. So the rural area phenomenon has also become the urban areas problems. And to address those challenges, the National Development Planning Ministry, they also have the two plans at the national and the regional level. So each of these regional and the national level, they have the scheme mainly. So after the making planning for the next 5 years, so after that there will be the budgeting process at both the regional and national level. So I think this is to give you the idea of our government is trying to setting the growth goal of the currently this condition into this condition. So the secondary industry will be included in the, how to say this, in the linked to for the industry of the urban areas. So there will be the primary and the secondary. So this growth pole theory that we will use to address the urban problems in the national level will be connected according to their roles and functions. So this is the area, the example of the syllabus, the Southeast syllabus that we plan to integrate the growth area conservation and then also the province area here, and we separate some area near the urban. So the rural area will support the urban area. So this system to linkage the urban and rural areas in 2030, the government already agreed the new urban agenda to support the SDGs that integrating the urban and territorial planning. So they call it as the new inclusive approach and enhance synergies between urban and rural communities and also the spaces. And from here, we are trying to realize the sustainable and equitable regional development growth. From the first is the poverty alleviation by develop the affirmative areas. And then the second step is economic equity by strengthening the urban and rural linkage. And then the highest, the final goal is for the economic growth, which is the 10th target of the metropolitan areas, including Jakarta. So this is the highest goal of our urban development planning. And then this is the global program for the urban shift with the our dream is city for people and planet, not only dream, but we already do some of this. So the focus area of the urban shift, as you can see, is the integrated urban and city planning, and then also the nature-based solution, urban biodiversity, circular economy, sustainable neighborhood, climate finance, climate action, and managing urban growth. So this urban shift concept will improve the health quality, the nature protection, as well as also the low carbon emission. As you can see here, this is the structure of the urban shift, the concept. And then this is the participating cities for the next 10 years, Jakarta, Semarang, Palembang, Bitung, and Balikpapan. So the participating cities for the first target, we cover only 5 cities first. So the role and objective of National Urban Policy, NUP, sorry. So the objective is first to design the strategic and anticipatory, especially to reference and guideline for all urban planning stakeholders. And then the second objective is to design the basis for synchronizing and also to planning the regulations and policies. And the last objective is to provide the basis so it according to the diverse roles, functions, and typologicals of cities, because the cities' characteristics are very there's so many types. So we also must have the basis, the basic to accommodate the diverse roles and everything. So for the final statement, we want to emphasize for the urban planning, the in action is the urban shift, which integrated the urban infrastructure development with the program of plus the carbon low emission program through National Urban Transformation Program, or NUTP, by 3 components: investment, and then institutional framework and financing. So we are also invite how the private public sector partnership and also innovative financing, as Prof. Campbell said. Partnership is one of the big it's urgent, and it should be implemented to address the climate change. And then these are the alternative and innovative financing mechanisms in Indonesia. So the estimation of demand and supply about climate financing, especially at the cities, the demand is especially 93 trillion US dollar, and then it's already 70% allocated in the urban area, and the supply 54% comes from the private sectors, and then it's already 230 billion USD is already contributed for to materialize this urban shift concept. Okay, I think that's all. I can on behalf of Dr. Medilizam about the urban climate linkage in the cities. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria, for offering to provide that at short notice too. I wanted to introduce members of a panel we're going to have here. So Andrew Campbell, who just gave us the keynote, will be chairing it, but I've also wanted to ask Dr. Isnu Pratama from ITB, who's also a great partner of RMIT, and Mary Johnson here as well, who's a researcher here at RMIT, working in food, just to come and discuss a few of the issues which have been presented this morning in two very interesting presentations. So thank you. And we have some more microphones.
Thank you, Andrew. So I'm going to ask each of my fellow panel members to introduce themselves in a very short presentation, focusing on some of your most recent work and current priorities, and then we'll develop some of these themes in a more detail, I hope. Can I start with you, Mary?
Good morning, everyone. Mary Johnson, and researcher with RMIT University, but also a farmer. And I farm in southwest Victoria, which is 4 hours away from Melbourne to the west. And I thought I'd share this with you because it greatly influences the work that I do, coming from a farming perspective and trying to understand the issues that affect or impact farmers and also rural communities. So the country that I come from is Gundit Mara country, Indigenous people of that region. My work involves, well, I've been called a practitioner, a pracademic, someone who has a little bit of academic background, but probably more on the practitioner side, where I work with rural communities and those that work with communities to help them identify their issues and also solve some of the problems that are involved. My work spans, at the moment, spans the Philippines and Fiji, so Asia Pacific. And I'll just share a little bit about the project that I'm working on in that area. It's funded by ACR, Andrew's prior organisation, the Australian government. But I really liked the word partnering, adding the verb to that, Andrew, because in this project we approach problem solving, solution solving through partnerships that are developed through agricultural extension processes. So it's about learning and it's about partnering. I'm going to use that a lot now. And it's about bringing people together to look at particular issues from a place-based point of view. So each farming community is going to have their own local climate, geography, local cultural and social conditions that farmers are working in, all these sorts of things which are going to influence the decision-making of farmers themselves, because it's smallholder farmers that we're working with. And the extension projects, agricultural extension projects that were developed particularly in Mindanao, in the southern part of the Philippines, originally with conflict vulnerable communities in Mindanao. So there were added layers to the partnering and partnerships in these projects. The projects involve farmers themselves, smallholder farmers, groups of, universities and academe and research. It involves government at local level, regional level and national level, and all the support mechanisms and the support people that would normally work with a farming community to help solve problem solving. And we come from a position of that being place-based focus, the people involved in that place are the best people to start to solve their problems. Now, there will be the need to bring in external expertise, and so that will need require strong networks to be made. And as I said, in Mindanao, those networks were really strong, but often at times limited because of working in conflict vulnerable area. So working there for 8 years with teams of people, we developed an extension or a learning process where, which ended up being called livelihood improvement through facilitated extension. It wasn't a technology transfer approach, it was a partnering and approach, and alliances developed, learning alliances developed between everybody that was involved in that particular area, from local to national level. So by doing that, you're starting to get feedback loops of information that's happening in a local level, but it's feeding back up through regional and national level. There were some really lovely learnings out of that project, and I can quite happy to share with you on ACR's website where you can learn that. That has now evolved into another project which now spans Asia and the Pacific, where we're working with the same sorts of approaches in Fiji, but now we have mentoring people from the Philippines who've already been through this, and they are mentoring our Fiji partners. And again, there's cross-fertilisation that's happening there and Australia, so it's multilateral learning that's happening.
Thanks, Mary. We might come back to those themes of mentoring and partnering later. Can I ask Isnu to introduce? Yes, a couple of slides would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you for the conference committee from Universitas 11 Maret and RMIT for including me in this panel. So, my name is Isnu from Bandung Institute of Technology, and today I will share insights from my research that examines two interrelated empirical case studies from urban and rural spaces in Java, Indonesia. Together, they reveal how climate resilient infrastructure and food security discourses intersect and shape people's everyday life. Okay, I will start with Pak Medilzam's slide that Bu Maria presented before that. Java is pressured by the climate change existing risk across the Indonesia, especially the Java's northern coast. And big cities like Jakarta and then Pekalongan and Semarang is like face serious threats from the land subsidence and sea level rise. And recently, you know that the national news, our president, Indonesian president, promotes a big or mega project infrastructure that by building the giant dam or the giant seawall across the stretching from the Banten to the East Java's province in Java. And if you look back that the Jakarta initiatives, that we have a pilot project of the kind of the mega infrastructure to tackle the climate impact, that we have the Grid Garuda or the NCICD project. And you know that this is the mega project is like planned since 1995, and it includes the inner and outer seawall. You can see the mythical bird that stretch along the north coast of the Jakarta city. And my research examines the impact on the building of the phase A of the Garuda Grid seawalls. It impacted particularly to the fisheries communities of the Kampung Kota. And there is action of like this dispossession process in this kind of the dike building for the giant seawall. At the time in 2016, the former governor of DKI Jakarta ordered the eviction of the Kampung Aquarium, if you know that case, and it's citing the need for the coastal development, particularly to build the concrete wall on the land of the kampung. And so this is like the master plan of the giant seawall in the Jakarta that maybe replicates in the next the next planning of the mega project of the giant seawall across the Java northern part. And then I try to trace and to understand the broader consequences of the project or the giant seawall project, and we must look beyond the city to the regions that supply its material of the concrete. So I found that about 600 kilometers east of Java, we find in the central Java part, we have North Kendeng Mountains with the karst area or karst region that extracted for the cement materials. And we found that the flow of cement from Jakarta's coastal projects to this cement factory through the various company records. And this is, we use the urban metabolism framework to allow us to reflect how material flows connecting the city and non-city inherently shape socio-spatial transformation and promote the relational urbanization process. And they have also the different story that the company and the factory of cement that they have negative impact to the farmers. And you know that in that region, in Rembang Regency and in Pati Regency, you know that this is like a food estate of the region Central Java, and many the vast land of the rice field is and then impacted from the kind of the factory. And this is like the landscape of the one of the village in Rembang, and this is the quarries, like 1 kilometer, and then between that is like the rice field stretch. And we have the problem here that in the one hand the government try to create the food estate ambitions in the region, but on the other hand, we have the extractive industrial agenda that also connected to the climate infrastructure beyond the region. And so the next story is like, and as you can see the belt conveyor of the cement that cut the cornfield and then rice field of the farmers here in the Central Java's region. And we move to the COVID crisis. During the COVID crisis, there is some problem, and you know that the lockdown is all economic activities paused. Informal workers in kampung, the urban kampung, is lost income almost overnight, and government food aid was slow and uneven. While rice prices rose and supplies dwindled, once again kampung residents relied to the mutual aid. And this we found that out this crisis came a remarkable, I can borrow the Andrew terms like the partnering process. The activists from the Kendeng, from the mountain region of Kendeng here in the Central Java in North Jakarta, is organized the purchase of the distribution of over 30 tons of rice during the COVID crisis. So the funding came through the crowdsourced donation under the campaign of mutual funding to the purchase rice for urban poor people. So they practically distributed the rice from the North Kendeng area that still conflicted with the cement factory to the urban kampung that also conflicted with the giant seawall infrastructure. So yeah, okay. So that my reflection is like, the first is like giant seawall is, if it's to move forward, it must consider the socio-ecological diversity affected settlement. And also the ESG framework for the climate infrastructure project must also trace the material origins. And the last one, the bottom-up practices of partnering and exchange between rural and urban relation is emerged through the mutual recognition of both of rural and urban space. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Terima kasih, Pak. It's extremely challenging to think about planning especially large concrete structures where the sea level is rising 1 centimetre per year in an area of very high seismic activity. Ibu Maria, terrific job on behalf of Bapanas for presenting the overall planning framework for Indonesia. In just a couple of minutes, can you introduce your own research?
Thank you. So I presented on behalf of the Bapanas, but actually my major research is about climate change effects on agriculture. So mainly I do what's the effects of the rising temperature on the physiology of plants and how it reduces the productivity of plants.
Fantastic, thank you. So our theme here is learning through partnerships in the Asia Pacific region. Isnu, could I start with you? If you're thinking about a whole peri-urban region and huge developments that are happening, can you outline the different types of organisations who have to be involved to come up with an integrated solution like you have presented?
Okay, thank you, Andre. Okay, my case provides like the story about the two interrelated case, like two stories between rural and urban spaces, and the partnering process during the COVID crisis that tackle the slow of government response to provide the aids of the food for the people. It's like emerged not of the blue, but it emerged from the long partnering between the struggle and solidarity of two cases. That they have like the NGOs, like the activists, that try to connect the narratives of, you know, that they try to against the top-down approach of the governments for the urban is like for the giant seawall, and the rural for like the cement companies. And the organization has a long relation that maybe it's the foundation to foster the partnering to the crisis. So it's like the essential one to provide these relations, because the NGOs is very actively connected with the local community.
Yeah. Mary, can I ask you to follow up on that? You were talking about working in conflict vulnerable communities in the southern Philippines. Can you describe the interface between top-down and bottom-up in areas where people have been fighting each other? And I recall having to sign a contract to provide funding for the Mindanao Liberation Front. And I thought, I'm not sure that too many public servants have funded a terrorist group before with aid funds.
Thank you. Yes, first and foremost, the project ran over 8 years. So, and that's another consideration to think about. It takes time to form partnerships for partnering. And in order to work with the smallholder farmers, the Australian researchers partnered very closely with our Philippine counterparts, but we also put on facilitators to work in the pilot areas, the 3 pilot areas in the conflict vulnerable communities where the project was going to take place. And the focus was on livelihood improvement, enhancement. One thing that was really probably of particular note and is important is that the project was invited to go and set up within these areas. It wasn't that someone in Australia thought of a good idea and thought that they'd go and introduce it. It came about by an invitation from a leading authority within in the BARM area to come and join, and that was important. So it took 2 to 3 years to establish the relationships with all people's organisations, groups such as the guerrilla groups that were in the BAM areas, plus government. So there was a lot of energy and investment in simply starting those relationships and getting those networks up and running. By doing that, ensured that first of all, everybody had a say about the sort of research that we were doing on improving livelihoods, but it involved not only working with smallholder groups, but going up to local government, going up to regional government, even at a national level. Because you're right, Andrew, a lot of our farmers were also our combatants in the conflict against central government. So, and they hadn't had good relationships with central government, clearly because of that. But the government officers working at local level really wanted to get their programs out, but the farmers were, the trust was at a fairly low level. So it was a matter of going slowly, very clear communication right across the project as it was developing, having key people at local level, regional level and national level that would support this, and just keeping the communication going. So that is how we approached it, and we had the luxury of time to do that.
Thanks, Mary. A key principle which I adhere to very strongly is that of subsidiarity in governance, and it's commonly understood that ideally you should be making decisions at the lowest possible level, but in fact a better understanding is that you should be making decisions at the most appropriate level, and that requires vertical reciprocity or trust. People at lower levels need to know that the decisions are being made at higher levels and in an appropriate way. For example, in COVID-19, we can't organise a vaccine at our level. We need the national government to organise vaccines. We need to know they're getting the right one in the right time. But the distribution down at a local level, that's a matter for other people at different levels to organise. I was impressed in the Philippines that at the central level there were people who understood that the trust in government had broken down, and so traditional approaches would not work. They also understood that hungry people and starving people are more likely to take up arms, and that if they have a livelihood and can feed themselves, they're much less likely to be involved in conflict. So there's that vertical trust and reciprocity is very important to try and engineer in a system. Ibu Maria, thinking about climate change impacts on agriculture, and in part with your Bapanas connections, can you explain in Indonesia, how does extension work? So how do we deliberately organise to try and encourage desired behaviour changes at the different levels? And I know Bapanas has a critical role in this in Indonesia.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a very difficult question for me, and maybe for the Indonesian, especially those who closely work with farmers. Yes, as you said, that the decision level makers, sometimes they are not synchronized with the lower level. So they're a missing link of the communication. So because we are the academic people, we work mostly at the lower level. So what is our approach to them is to understand what they need. So make a better communication with the farmer levels, and as you said, that behavior and the mindset are not easy things to interrupt it with. Yeah, so a long, how to say, long partnership to long guidance is very important for the extinction. So yes, but we also lack of the extension stuff at the farm level. It's still a huge challenge for us, but we are very happy that now, recently, maybe young people, they will come to involve in farming. So, however, we have a good hope, much better future for the agriculture among the challenges of the climate change. So, I think the penas and the extension, there's still a big gap. Yeah, but yeah, but we confident that our extension ability, the staffs and the academic people who work together with the government and the farmer level, we linking them to communicate.
Terima kasih. There was a very big review of extension literature done in Australia not that long ago by Professor David Pannell at the University of Western Australia. And they reviewed 70 years of extension literature, and they said basically the rules have not changed at all. If an innovation is to be adopted at scale, it needs to offer a relative advantage. In other words, it needs to be much better than the current practices, either increases yields, increases profit, or decreases work. And if it doesn't do two or more of those things, it won't be adopted. Complexity, if it's too complex. Trialability, if the farmer can't try it to see. And worldview, goodness of fit. If it doesn't fit with the farmer's conception of their self and their business. In other words, if someone's a livestock farmer and you say, well, I have an innovation, but it means you need to get rid of all your livestock, they're probably not going to do it. And those fundamentals have not changed. And very often we find people in climate change and other things saying the farmers should do this or should do that. And when you look at what this or that is, it doesn't meet the basic test. And so an extension intervention, just persuasion, is unlikely to be effective. You're going to need markets, regulation, incentives, planning, other instruments, not just persuading people. And I remember on an agroforestry study tour of China, actually it was in 1989 and we got caught up in Tiananmen Square, but that's another story. We were at a research farm and we were seeing these wonderful agroforestry systems on the research farm. And we hadn't seen anything like that out of the bus window, driving for hours across the countryside. And I asked the professor who was head of the research farm, through the interpreter, why is it that what the farmers are doing is different from what you've been doing on the research farm for 30 years? And eventually, after a lot of backwards and forwards through the interpreter, the old professor said, "Oh, you mean extension?" And he said, "Impossible." And so that wasn't very encouraging, but it reflected the reality. And my conclusion was that the system they had developed on the research farm was too complex. And you had to wait 20 years to get the big advantage from the agroforestry. And so for the average smallholder farmer, it was not adoptable. And often with our climate change interventions, we're stuck in that same dilemma that we need to undertake a short-term cost or even a medium-term cost to get a benefit that maybe the next generation and the one after that will be the beneficiaries of, which means that you then need some sort of public assistance to get over that hump. And designing that whole package is very tricky, and you need political continuity to be able to see it through. And we've not achieved that in Australia. And it's hard to see how in a pluralistic democratic society that one can achieve that level of continuity.
Just a quick one on the back of that. 3 weeks ago, we brought together 40-odd people in a room in Los Banos in the Philippines to co-design a new research project. And the important part of this was that we flew in the farmers who were going to be interested in being party to it, the researchers, local government representatives, corporates. So right at the very beginning of a research project, we were including the very people who might be part of that project. And so, for example, the smallholder farmers had a big say in what the research should be on. And I think that's a huge step forward.
So, Isnu, can you tell us a little bit more about the peri-urban zone? And you mentioned, I think, trying to achieve more circularity. How do you do that with cement and with large engineering approaches? How does that mesh with a circular economy type approach? What are you doing with waste? Are you getting waste to energy or waste to food or use of renewables in those approaches in a peri-urban context?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I see there is a contradiction between the two different materials, between the cements and the food one. Yeah. The cement is like pre-COVID, like in the first phase of the China Sea Wall development, like in 2016 until 2020, that it's like the infrastructure. Our former President Jokowi, that he has a vision about the infrastructure development is very intensive at that time. So the consequence is like opening the many cement factories across the rural regions, especially, and thus the circularity emerged when the infrastructure development is massive, like the Genesee Wall. So the other rural region is like the extracted for the circularity of the cement. So in my case, I see that the contradiction to the food flows that productively feed the people in the city. And it's happened during the crisis that there is no food quality available, and the rise of food, the rice is also surged. And that is the partnering became the productive flow of the circularity from the food from the rural and to the urban. And that is also, I find that the counter narratives happen on that this kind of circularity of the food during the COVID crisis, because in the beginning of this manufacturers built, their narratives is like the region is infertile to the farmers. So they and then during the crisis they prove the other one that this is not infertile, this is very productive, and we can supply it even during the crisis. And that kind of the solidarity, and you show it, you call it the partnering happens because it's also about the counter narrative to the development approach, something like that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm still. I'm interested that Jokowi, he was a forester originally, but I'm interested whether there's any, mangrove systems and green infrastructure on the coast seems to me to be potentially more resilient than concrete structures, particularly if you have earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. How do you get that balance between hard infrastructure and more soft or natural infrastructure?
yeah, that's interesting. That's I'm thinking about that. The idea to extend the giant seawall from the Jakarta to all the Java's northern part is like, it's very tricky to develop a big mega project like that, especially if we replicate the concrete wall along the North Java. It's very problematic. Yeah, the engineers one. The engineers approach is like, yeah, we can see the contradiction on the kampung eviction because the engineering practice of the wall. And right now we have, yeah, you mentioned about the mangrove wall in some part of Java, and that's also my reflection that we can get all the wall across the Java. Instead, we can see the variegated landscape of the fishing communities and the socio-ecological in some parts that maybe mangrove is more effective rather than the concrete wall. Yeah, I think I agree with that. So it's like we have to scrutinize every part of the North Java before we build the giant seawall, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of experience with mangrove restoration in Indonesia.
Yeah.
You guys are the experts in that. So I hope it's being deployed appropriately. Ibu Maria, what do you think is the biggest or most hopeful opportunity in climate change adaptation for agriculture in Indonesia?
So the biggest hope is we understand the climate shifting also shifts the potential of the crop can be grown at particular area. So what I see is from this potential, from this climate change, we can get the benefits of producing the, how to say, the new variety of the crops which grown. For example, now some areas are getting hot with the higher temperature, so we can introduce some variety of crops to, how to say, to get new products from those area. I think, and also it's encourage the innovation, especially in the biotechnology. Yeah, because we really have to, how to say that, to meet the requirements of the crop to the weather or to the climate. So it really encouraged the biotechnology innovation to, how do we say that, the modified modified, I'm sorry, how to say that, the new variety which, for example, resilient to drought, resilient to flood. So it's, yeah, so it's really encouraged the technology innovations in agriculture. Yeah, I think that's the new hopes for us.
Thank you very much, Ibu Maria. I think that's an interesting introduction of the idea of, yes, we need transformative things, but at the same time we need to help the farmers adapt to their current reality and to keep doing the incremental improvements as well. So you can't just have a black and white switch of saying, well, we're not going to do that incremental stuff anymore, we're going to go totally transformative. So I think the time for this session is coming to a close. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists very much. Hopefully we've illuminated some aspects of the intersections between climate change, agriculture and food security in our region. No country has got all the answers and certainly has not implemented all the answers. And we have a lot to learn from each other, and we have, and we'll learn that a lot faster and more completely if we do it through partnerships than each of us soldiering away on our own. So thank you very much for your contributions and best wishes for your ongoing work. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew, for that. I'll briefly, actually, first I'll start with giving yourself, Mary, Isnu, and Maria for standing in, a gift from us. Great. Okay. Just not to delay much longer. Thanks so much for that panel. I think I've found some very interesting insights to that idea you had around looking through the scale issue. I think is really important, all the way from seawalls in Jakarta down to what actually happens on the ground in some very difficult locations. And I think we'll talk a bit more about those scale issues later when we introduce some specific technological issues around agronomy and the like this afternoon, and think through how that scale operates. And particularly here, we're talking about urbanising areas. Sites which I'm quite interested in is how do we think about the scale of change that we need in some places that are already undergoing some very difficult transitions themselves in terms of land use, in terms of farmer capacity, and of course what people see as their future livelihoods. So thank you so very much. Just before our lunch break, we have one more presentation from Professor Saman, who the Dean of Agriculture at the UNS, who I'm going to invite down to give us a talk looking specifically at the potential for ASEAN-Australian cooperation in agriculture too. So welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I will present about redesigning Indonesia food security under climate change through ASEAN-Australia cooperation. The global climate change and food security. Climate is the new determinant of harvest. Because about 0.8 degree Celsius rise since 1990 has shortened growing season in Southeast Asia. Irregular monsoon pattern goes up to 20 until 30% yield loss. Agriculture now contributes about 25% of ASEAN GHG emission. Without adaptation, regional rice outputs might drop 15% by 2050. If we look at the picture from since 1900 until now, from year to year, the temperature trend is always increase. Sorry. And Indonesia food system at crossroads. The first is because the rice more than 50% of caloric index and highly climate sensitive. The second one, about 7 million hectares prone to droughts and 4 million hectares to floods. And the third, smallholder dominates more than 85% of farms land. So the national target, zero hunger on 2030 via climate smart production. We have our pillars of food security under climate stress. The four pillar is availability, access, utilization, and stability. For availability, and in the climate challenge condition, droughts and heat reduce yields, and innovation pathways might be drought tolerant varieties, climate smart agriculture technologies, and for access pillar, in climate challenge, price instability and supply disruption, and innovation pathway might be regional trades cooperation. For utilization pillars, in the climate challenge condition, maybe nutrition deficiency, and innovation pathways might be diversified crops and functional foods. And the stability pillars for climate challenge is extreme event and policy shocks, and innovation pathways might be early warning system and adaptive governance. UNS research from this, we have conducted for breeding for drought tolerant and root plasticity in soybean, maize, chili, rice, also sorghum, and other. And then integrated nutrients management by innovation in biochar and biochar advocacy and nano fertilizer for soil carbon and yield stability, and water use efficiency enhancement in food crops under limited irrigation, and in collaboration with our partners from China and Pakistan. Innovation for climate smart agriculture. Climate smart agriculture identic with triple wins approach. The first is increase in productivity. The second one is adaptation to climate change, and the third is reducing greenhouse gas emission. Steps to achieve these wins. The first is precision irrigation using sensor-based moisture control, organic amendment, biochar, and local microorganism fertilizer for soil health, and digital crops monitoring, crop diversification. For example, rice, sorghum, legume rotation, and farmer field school for climate smart agriculture capacity building. And the ASEAN cooperation for climate resilience. The first is climate smart rice system model for regional replication. The second one is modeling future water security and trade resilience. Number 3 is pilot site for GSA demonstration plots and training center for ASEAN young researchers. And our outcome is joint research, policy brief, and community practices. Policy integration and governance pathways. Indonesia from research to action plan. The first is incorporates climate smart agriculture target into Indonesia NDC nationally determined contribution update 2025, aligned with ASEAN Vision 2025 and ASEAN Climate Change Strategic Action Plan. Strengthen extension system through digital advisory platform, incentivize climate resilient farming via green finance and carbon credits, and foster close ministry coordination between agriculture, environment, and education. Empowering youth and local communities. Launch of UNS Agro Innovation Hub 2024. This is a student-led climate smart agriculture startup. Youth training on climate smart farming application and IoT tools. Women farmer as agent of adaptation in Central Java, and knowledge exchange with ASEAN Climate Leadership Program. And the road to 2035 vision for a resilient ASEAN with key milestones. The first is regional climate smart agriculture network led by ASEAN and also Australia universities. The second one is sustainable sorghum and maize value chains for drylands. The third is low carbon fertilizer technologies commercialized by 2028. Number 4 is integration of climate education into curricula across ASEAN and Australia. And number 5 is joint policy briefs and funded projects under ASEAN Australia Framework 2035. This is my president, and thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Professor Samanhudi. I think there's some very interesting ideas around collaboration, which is what we're here to do today. And I encourage people to talk more about what might be possible in those terms, because we're about to have some lunch. And I think if you take the opportunity to meet someone you don't know and discuss with them the sorts of opportunities you see for some collaborative education and research in these areas, I think it'll be really worthwhile. So we'll see you all back here at 1 o'clock. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, till 1 o'clock sharp. That means 1 o'clock on the dot. I'll see you back here. Thanks.